Have you ever noticed that smoke always rises from a source, but sometimes you can't find where it's coming from? My name is Harper Sinclair. I'm a fire lookout for BC Wildfire Service, stationed in the Kootenay region of southeastern British Columbia. For the past 4 summers, I've worked from a tower perched at 2,000 meters elevation, monitoring over 600 square kilometers of mountain forest for signs of wildfire. My job is simple on paper: watch for smoke, document coordinates, report to dispatch, confirm fire locations. Standard fire detection work in one of the most remote and fire-prone regions of the Canadian Rockies. Most people think fire lookouts just sit in towers enjoying the view. They don't understand that the job requires constant vigilance, pattern recognition, the ability to distinguish between legitimate smoke from fires and false alarms like dust, fog, or distant clouds. And most importantly, knowing when smoke appears in ways that don't make sense. When it rises from locations where nothing is burning. When it moves against the wind. When it appears night after night in the same spot. Every investigation finds nothing but cold forest floor. If you stay until the end, I'll tell you about the protocols. Not the official Wildfire Service guidelines about reporting procedures and safety equipment. The other protocols. The ones that previous lookouts documented in handwritten logs kept in the tower. Rules about specific types of smoke you don't report to dispatch. About patterns that appear on clear nights when there are no fires anywhere in the region. About why certain grid coordinates are marked in old maps with red X's and the notation, "Do not investigate, report visual only." Because in the Kootenay Mountains, where I've spent 4 summers alone in a fire tower, there are columns of smoke that rise every season. Smoke that appears on schedule. Smoke that doesn't dissipate like normal smoke. Smoke that leads search teams to empty forests where nothing has burned for decades. And if you work here long enough, you learn that some smoke isn't coming from the fire. It's coming from something else. Something that's been appearing in these mountains for longer than wildfire records exist. And the only way to keep this job is to learn which smoke to report and which smoke to document quietly in the unofficial log and pretend you never saw. I grew up in Nelson, about 90 kilometers west of my current posting. My father was a forestry contractor. My mother worked for the regional district managing emergency services. I spent my childhood in the mountains, hiking, camping, learning to read weather patterns and identify tree species. After high school, I took a wildfire management certificate at Selkirk College. I wanted outdoor work. I wanted to contribute to forest protection. The BC Wildfire Service was hiring lookouts. The Kootenays needed someone willing to work isolated postings. The pay was decent. The work was meaningful. And I'd be doing what I loved, spending entire summers in the mountains watching over the forest. My tower is accessed by a hiking trail that takes 4 hours to climb. No road access. Everything comes in by helicopter or on my back. The tower itself is a standard 14-foot by 14-foot cab sitting atop a 40-foot steel structure. Inside, I have everything I need for a summer season: bed, propane stove, radio equipment, the Osborne Firefinder, a circular map table with an alidade for pinpointing smoke locations, solar panels, water catchment, and windows on all 4 sides provide a 360-degree view of mountain ranges, valleys, and endless forest. During the fire season, May through September, this tower is my home, my workplace, my entire world. I work alone. The nearest other lookout is 35 kilometers away. Dispatch is in Cranbrook, accessible only by radio. I see maybe 3 or 4 other people all summer: supply helicopters, trail maintenance crews, the occasional ambitious hiker. Otherwise, it's just me in the forest and the smoke. The work itself is meditative. You learn the landscape, every ridge, every valley, the way morning fog moves, how afternoon thermals create dust devils, where lightning tends to strike during storms. You watch, you wait, and when you see smoke, you use the firefinder to get coordinates, radio dispatch, and wait for confirmation from investigation teams. Most smoke is legitimate. Lightning strikes, abandoned campfires, the occasional arson case. But you also learn to recognize false alarms. Dust from logging roads, low clouds in valleys, steam from hot springs. Your job is to filter signals from noise, to report only genuine fire threats. And after 4 years, I'd gotten very good at distinguishing what belonged from what didn't. When I arrived for my 4th season in May, the outgoing lookout from the previous year met me at the trailhead. His name was Robert Chen. He'd worked the tower for 2 seasons. He looked tired, older than his 38 years. We hiked up together. He showed me the basics I already knew: equipment operation, water management, wildlife protocols, standard lookout orientation. But on our last evening before he hiked out, he did something different. He pulled out a separate logbook, not the official one. This was older, handwritten, pages dating back to the 1980s. "This isn't part of your official records," he said. "But every lookout who's worked here more than one season knows about it. Read it. Follow what it says. Don't dismiss it as stories." He opened to a page marked with a faded red ribbon. The entry was dated July 1987. It described smoke, but not normal wildfire smoke. This smoke appeared at night, rose from a specific valley, moved in spirals. Investigation teams found nothing. No fire, no heat signatures, just a cold forest. The entry warned, Grid 47 in coordinates 28 to 31. Smoke appears approximately every 14 days. Do not report to dispatch. Log visually only. Investigation yields nothing and wastes resources. I looked at Robert. Is this real? His expression didn't change. You'll see it. Everyone does. Usually within the first month. There's smoke that doesn't come from fires. It appears in patterns. Same locations. Same intervals. We've documented it for decades. Dispatch knows about it unofficially. They won't tell you directly, but if you report smoke from certain coordinates, they'll send teams. The teams find nothing. After a few false alarms, dispatch starts questioning your competence. So we don't report it. We log it here. We track it. We try to understand it. But we don't waste resources investigating smoke that never leads to fire. What causes it? Robert closed the logbook. Nobody knows. Some lookouts think it's geological, venting gases from deep underground. Some think it's atmospheric, temperature inversions creating visual distortions. Some think it's older than that. Indigenous knowledge from the Tanaxa people mentions smoke in these mountains that doesn't come from burning. Spirit smoke, warning smoke, boundary markers. The old stories say not to follow it, not to trust it, that it leads people away from safe paths. He looked out the window at the darkening mountains. What I know is this: the smoke is real. It's documented, follows patterns. And lookouts who obsess over it, who try to investigate personally, either quit early or request transfer. One lookout in 2003 hiked down to investigate smoke she'd been seeing. She was found 3 days later. Hypothermic. Dehydrated. 12 kilometers off any trail. She couldn't explain how she'd gotten there. I couldn't remember those 3 days. She resigned immediately. He left the next morning. The helicopter picked him up. And I was alone. Alone with a fire tower and unofficial logbook full of warnings about smoke that doesn't come from fires, And a summer of watching the mountains for threats I was beginning to understand might not all be forest fires. I wanted to dismiss it, wanted to think Robert had been isolated too long, that previous lookouts had let pattern-seeking and loneliness create mythology around normal phenomena. But I'd seen his face. I heard the certainty in his voice. He wasn't speculating. He was warning me, preparing me, teaching me the real job, which wasn't just spotting fires, but learning which smoke to report and which smoke to quietly document and ignore. Because apparently, in the Kootenay Mountains where I'd just committed to spending my 4th summer, smoke appeared regularly that had nothing to do with burning. And my job, my real job, was learning to tell the difference. Learning which smoke meant fire and which smoke meant something else entirely. Something that had been appearing in these mountains long enough for lookouts to have developed protocols. Long enough for patterns to be tracked across decades. Long enough for people to go missing when they tried to investigate too closely. Tomorrow my real training will begin. Not from official manuals or dispatch instructions, but from that handwritten logbook. From the accumulated wisdom of lookouts who'd sat in this same tower and watched the same impossible smoke rise from valleys where nothing was burning. And I'd learn whether Robert's warnings were real or whether 4 summers alone in a mountaintop tower was finally going to teach me something about the Kootenays that no forestry certificate could prepare me for. The first 3 weeks were normal. I settled into the routine. Morning weather observations. Scanning the horizon every 15 minutes. Documenting cloud movements. Afternoon thunderstorm watch. Evening reports to dispatch. Standard lookout work. The forest below was green and quiet. No fires anywhere in my coverage area. Just endless Douglas fir, lodgepole pine, and Engelmann spruce stretching across mountain ridges and valleys. I saw the occasional helicopter doing prescribed burns. Trail crews working in the distance. Normal summer activity. Then on day 22 I saw it for the first time. It was 11 p.m. I'd been asleep but woke to use the bathroom. The moon was 3/4 full. Good visibility. I glanced out the north window out of habit, and there it was. Smoke. Rising from a valley about 8 kilometers away. Thin column. White-gray. Rising straight despite a north wind that should have been pushing it horizontal. I grabbed binoculars. I watched it. The smoke rose maybe 200 meters. Then stopped. Didn't dissipate. Just hung there. Motionless. I checked the firefinder. Got coordinates. Grid 47N29. I started to reach for the radio. Then I remembered Robert's logbook. I pulled it out. Found the section. Grid 47N coordinates 28 to 31. The exact area. The entry said, nighttime smoke. Appears every 13 to 15 days. Rises straight regardless of wind. Persists 30 to 90 minutes then vanishes completely. Multiple investigations found no fire, no heat, no burn scars. Do not report to dispatch. I watched the smoke for 40 minutes. It didn't move, didn't spread, just stood there like a pillar. Then, around 11:45 p.m., it began to fade. Not dissipate like normal smoke catching wind. Just faded, like someone was slowly turning down its opacity. By midnight it was gone. I checked with binoculars. Nothing. Just dark forest and moonlight. I didn't sleep much that night. Kept watching the North Valley. But the smoke didn't return. In the morning, I documented it in the unofficial log. Day 22 to 2,310 hours, grid 47N29 column smoke, white-gray, vertical rise despite wind, duration 45 minutes, faded without dispersing. No report to dispatch per historical protocol. I checked previous entries. I found dozens. Different lookouts. Different years. Same location. Same description. Some entries noted 14-day intervals. Some noted patterns, smoke appearing more frequently during new moons or after storms. But all entries agreed. This smoke never led to fire. Investigations always found nothing. Over the next month, I saw it 3 more times. Always at night. Always the same valley. Always the same behavior, rising straight, hanging motionless, fading without dispersing. I documented each occurrence in the unofficial log. Followed the protocol. Didn't report to dispatch. But I also started noticing other things. Other columns of smoke. Different locations. Different patterns. One appeared only during dawn. Another only during heavy overcast. Another in a spiral pattern that rotated slowly. Each had entries in the logbook. Each had protocols. Observe only, document, do not investigate, do not report. By July, I documented 7 different smoke phenomena, all unexplained, all following patterns previous lookouts had tracked for decades. And I started to understand what Robert had meant. This wasn't just false alarms or atmospheric oddities. This was organized, patterned. Whatever was creating this smoke, it followed rules, appeared on schedules, repeated behaviors across years. And the more I learned the patterns, the more I realized reporting this to dispatch would make me look incompetent. They'd send teams, find nothing, question my ability to distinguish real fires from illusions. So I did what every lookout before me had done. I learned which smoke was fire and which smoke was something else. And I stopped trusting my initial assumption that all smoke came from burning. In late July, I found the complete protocols. Robert had shown me the basics, but the full documentation was extensive. The logbook contained 60-plus pages of entries dating back to 1983, when the current tower was built. But there were also photocopied pages from older records, notes from the previous tower that had stood here from 1952 to 1982. The earliest entry I found was from 1954. Same phenomenon, same valleys, same unexplained smoke. The protocols were organized by grid coordinate and smoke type. 7 major categories. Category 1, pillar smoke, vertical columns appearing at night in grid 47 and coordinates 28 to 31. Interval, 13 to 15 days. Duration, 30 to 90 minutes. Protocol, visual log only. No investigation. No dispatch report. Category 2, dawn spiral, rotating smoke column appearing at sunrise in grid 46 and 18. Interval, new moon periods. Duration, 15 to 30 minutes. Protocol, photograph if possible. Document rotation direction. No investigation. Category 3, ridgeline drift. Low-lying smoke moving along specific ridge despite wind direction. Grid 48N12 to 48N19. Interval, after significant rainfall. Duration variable. Protocol, track movement pattern. Note if drift reverses direction. Category 4, valley fill. Dense smoke filling the entire valley floor overnight. Grid 45N22 to 45N26. Interval, irregular 20 to 40 day gaps. Duration, sunrise to 0900 HRS. Protocol, do not report unless accompanied by heat signature or actual fire confirmation. Category 5, beacon smoke, single dense column visible from multiple towers simultaneously. Grid 47 and 33. Interval, summer solstice plus or minus 3 days. Duration, sunset only 20 to 40 minutes. Protocol, cross-reference with other towers. Document consensus observation. Category 6, ground crawl, smoke moving horizontally at ground level against all wind patterns. Grid 46N08 to 46N14. Interval: unpredictable. Duration: hours to full day. Protocol: if smoke crosses trails or roads, report to trail crews for safety. Otherwise, observe only. Category 7. The caller: smoke that appears to respond to observer attention or vocalization. Multiple grids. Interval: unpredictable. Duration: variable. Protocol: do not engage. Do not vocalize towards smoke. Cease observation if smoke changes behavior when observed. Each category had incident reports. Lookouts who'd violated protocols. Category 7 violations were the most serious. 3 documented cases of lookouts who'd engaged with responsive smoke. One in 1978 had shouted towards smoke that appeared to move when she watched it. The smoke had changed direction, moved toward the tower. She'd evacuated, hiked down overnight, refused to return. Another in 1994 had used a signal mirror to flash toward smoke during dawn. The smoke had pulsed in response, grown larger. He'd reported feeling watched and followed for the rest of the season. Requested transfer. The third incident was from 2003. The lookout Robert had mentioned who'd gone to investigate and was found days later with no memory. The protocols were clear. These smoke phenomena were cataloged, tracked, documented across decades, but they were not to be investigated, not to be engaged with, not to be reported to official channels unless they posed an immediate fire threat. The unofficial system worked because lookouts followed it. I learned the patterns, separated real fire smoke from the other kind, and most importantly, treated the unexplained smoke as something to observe but never interact with. By August, I'd seen all 7 categories at least once. I'd documented each in the log with dates, times, weather conditions, duration. I'd followed every protocol. I'd become proficient at the real job of fire lookout in the Kootenays, distinguishing between smoke from burning and smoke from whatever else existed in these mountains that could create columns of white-gray vapor that rose against wind, moved in patterns, and appeared on schedules that had nothing to do with lightning or human activity. I'd also started noticing something else. The intervals weren't random. When I mapped all 7 categories on a calendar, they created a pattern. Pillar smoke appeared in a 14-day cycle. Dawn spiral aligned with lunar phases. Beacon smoke was solstice-linked. Even the irregular phenomena like valley fill and ground crawl showed loose patterns when examined across multiple years of entries. Whatever was creating this smoke, it wasn't random. It was systematic, organized, following rules that previous lookouts had been documenting for 70 years. By late August, the isolation was affecting me. 3 months alone in a tower. 3 months watching smoke that shouldn't exist. 3 months following protocols that required me to see impossible things and pretend they were normal. I started having dreams. Same theme. Hiking down to investigate smoke. Following it into valleys. Finding nothing but cold forest. Then realizing I was lost. That the smoke had led me in circles. That I'd been walking for hours but the tower was somehow farther away. I'd wake up sweating despite the mountain cold. I called dispatch more frequently than necessary, just to hear another voice, just to confirm I was still part of the real world. But I also noticed myself self-censoring. When they asked if I'd seen any smoke, I'd report only the legitimate fires. The lightning strike in Grid 49N. The illegal campfire in the Alpine Zone. Not the pillar smoke I'd watched 3 nights ago. Not the dawn spiral that had rotated counterclockwise for 22 minutes at sunrise. Those went in the unofficial log. Those stayed secret. And that division between what I could report and what I had to hide was creating a psychological strain I hadn't anticipated. In early September, I violated a protocol. Not intentionally, but a violation nonetheless. I was photographing the beacon smoke near sunset. The summer solstice had passed months ago, but the smoke appeared anyway, off schedule. Dense column rising from grid 47 and 33. I was documenting it with my camera when I noticed something. The smoke was pulsing, rhythmically, like breathing. And as I watched through the viewfinder, I realized the pulses matched my heartbeat. When my pulse quickened with realization, the smoke pulsed faster. When I held my breath, it slowed. I lowered the camera, stepped back from the window. My heart was racing. The smoke was responding to me. This was Category 7. The caller. Protocol said cease observation if smoke changes behavior when observed. But I'm already engaged. Already established the connection. The smoke knew I was watching. I knew I'd noticed the synchronization. I closed all the curtains, sat in the dark, waited. After 20 minutes, I carefully looked out the north window. The smoke was gone. I checked the other windows. Nothing. It had vanished the moment I'd stopped observing it. I documented the incident in the unofficial log with shaking hands. Day 119 to 1847 hours, grid 47 and 33 beacon smoke appearing off schedule. Noted rhythmic pulsing synchronized to observer heartbeat. Ceased observation per Category 7 protocol. Smoke vanished within 20 minutes of breaking visual contact. No further engagement. That night I barely slept. Keep checking windows. The smoke didn't return. But I couldn't stop thinking about the synchronization, about how it had known. I had felt my pulse somehow, had responded to my biological rhythm. And I understood why the protocols were so strict about Category 7. This wasn't just a visual phenomenon. This was interactive, responsive, aware of observation. And lookouts who engaged with it, who tested its responsiveness, who tried to understand it, they were the ones who ended up evacuating or going missing or requesting transfers. The next morning, I radioed the lookout at the next tower 35 kilometers east. His name was Marcus. We talked a few times over the summer. I asked if he'd seen anything unusual yesterday evening. There was a long pause. You mean the smoke at 47 and 33? He said. Yeah, I saw it. Logged it in my unofficial record. You saw it too? Yes. Did it? Did it do anything unusual when you watched it? Another pause. Define unusual. For that category, everything's unusual. He wasn't going to say more over official radio channels, but his tone told me he'd seen something too, had maybe experienced the same synchronization, and had followed the protocol by ceasing observation. For the next week, I was extra careful, followed every protocol exactly. When I saw unexplained smoke, I documented it quickly and looked away. Didn't stare. Didn't engage. Didn't test whether it would respond. The smoke appeared on schedule. Pillar smoke in its valley. Dawn spiral rotating at sunrise. Valley fill dissipates by mid-morning. All normal. All following established patterns. But I also felt watched. Like the mountains were aware of me now. Like whatever created the smoke knew I was up here. I knew I'd noticed the synchronization and was waiting to see if I'd engage again. By mid-September, the fire season was ending. The weather was cooling. Thunderstorms were rare. The forest was transitioning to fall. My replacement for next season would arrive in late September for handover. I'd survived another summer. Follow the protocols. Documented dozens of unexplained smoke phenomena. I learned the patterns and kept the secret, kept the division between official reports and the unofficial log, between what dispatch needed to know and what lookouts tracked among themselves. But I'd also changed. For summers of watching smoke that didn't come from fires. For summers of seeing patterns that shouldn't exist. For summers of following protocols that required acknowledging impossible things while maintaining official denial. It creates a cognitive strain, a split reality where you operate in two worlds simultaneously. The official world where you're a professional fire lookout reporting legitimate threats, and the unofficial world where you're documenting phenomena that violate physics and have been appearing in these mountains for longer than modern fire services have existed. My replacement arrived on September 23rd. Her name was Kira Abamson. She was Metis from Fort St. John. First-time lookout. Eager. Professional. I spent 3 days showing her the basics: equipment operation, weather documentation, firefinder calibration, standard orientation. But on our last evening before I hiked out, I did what Robert had done for me. I pulled out the unofficial logbook. "This isn't part of your official records," I said, echoing Robert's words. "But you need to read it. Follow what it says. Don't dismiss it." I showed her the categories, the protocols, the decades of documentation. She listened, asked good questions. "Do you believe it?" she finally asked. I thought about the pillar smoke I'd watched rise vertically against the wind, the dawn spiral rotating without explanation, the beacon smoke that had synchronized with my heartbeat. "I've seen all 7 categories," I said. "I've documented them. I followed the protocols. Whether I believe in them doesn't matter. They're real. They're documented. And your job is to learn which smoke means fire and which smoke means something else. Dispatch won't tell you directly. They'll send teams if you report the wrong smoke. You'll waste resources. You'll look incompetent. So you learn. You watch. You document here. And you follow the protocols." I left the next morning, hiked down the trail. The helicopter picked me up at the staging area. As we flew over the mountains, I looked back at the tower, saw Kira in the cab, watching the landscape, beginning her education in the real work of fire lookouts in the Kootenays. I wondered if she'd see the smoke this season, wondered if she'd follow the protocols or if curiosity would make her engage. I wondered if she'd last one season or become like me, someone who'd spent multiple summers learning patterns that couldn't be explained. I spent the winter in Nelson, worked part-time at an outdoor equipment store. I tried to reintegrate into normal life, but I kept thinking about the smoke, about the patterns, about Category 7 and the synchronization. I'd followed protocols. I'd never investigated, never hiked down to the valleys where the smoke appeared, never tried to find a source, but I'd also never stopped wondering. What created it? Why did it follow patterns? Why was it responsive to observation? And what had happened to the lookout in 2003 who'd gone to investigate? I researched Tanaxa knowledge about the region, found references in academic anthropology papers, stories about spirit smoke that marked boundaries, about places where the mountains breathed, about respect protocols for areas where smoke appeared without fire. The stories were old, predated European contact, predated the tower by centuries. The smoke had always been there. The patterns had always existed. Modern fire lookouts had just documented what indigenous knowledge had always known. Some smoke in these mountains doesn't come from burning, comes from something else. Something older, something that exists in specific locations and follows patterns that suggest intelligence or, at minimum, systematic natural processes we don't understand. I applied to return for a 5th season, was accepted. I arrived at the tower in early May. Kira had survived her first season. She documented the smoke, followed the protocols. I saw Category 7 twice, she told me during the handover. Second time I called out to it, asked what it was. The smoke moved toward the tower. I evacuated for 3 hours. When I came back, it was gone. But I heard sounds that night, like footsteps on the stairs, but nobody was there. I didn't engage again after that. She left. I settled in. Another summer alone with the mountains and the smoke and the unofficial logbook that was now thicker with my entries and Kira's entries and decades of lookouts before us who'd all documented the same impossible phenomena. I wondered how long this had been going on, how many lookouts had sat in this exact tower, watching smoke that didn't come from fires, following protocols that required seeing and not seeing simultaneously, maintaining the division between official reports and unofficial documentation. The first unexplained smoke appeared on day 18, pillar smoke in grid 47N29, rising straight despite westerly wind. I documented it, didn't report it, follow protocol. Over the summer, I saw all 7 categories multiple times, tracked their intervals, noted variations, added to the accumulated knowledge, became part of the lineage of lookouts who'd chosen to return, who'd accepted that the job wasn't just fire detection but pattern recognition of phenomena that existed outside official acknowledgement. Sometimes, late at night, I'd stand at the windows looking at the dark mountains, wondering what else was out there that fire lookouts didn't talk about, what other phenomena had protocols, what other impossible things were documented in unofficial logs across the network of towers in British Columbia. Because if smoke that didn't come from fire was real and documented across 70 years, what else existed in these remote mountain regions that was observed but never officially reported? I didn't know. But I knew that every lookout who worked these mountains long enough learned the same lesson. Not all smoke comes from burning. Some smoke rises from sources we don't understand, sources that follow patterns, sources that respond to observation, sources that have been appearing in the Kootenays for longer than fire towers have existed. And the protocols exist because previous lookouts learned what happens when you investigate too closely, when you engage instead of observing, when you cross the line from documentation to interaction. I'm still a fire lookout, still return to the tower every summer, still watch for smoke and distinguish between fire and the other kind, still add entries to the unofficial log, still maintain the secret that every lookout here shares, that we see things we don't report, document things we don't investigate, and follow protocols that exist outside official channels because some phenomena in these mountains operate by rules that predate our understanding of how mountains and forests and smoke should behave. The smoke is still there, still rising from valleys where nothing burns, still following patterns, still appearing on schedules that suggest organization and purpose. And I'm still watching, still documenting, still following the protocols. Because that's the real job, not just detecting fires, but learning which smoke to report and which smoke to quietly log and acknowledge and respect, and most importantly, never ever engage with. Because in the Kootenay Mountains, where I spend my summers alone in a tower watching over hundreds of square kilometers of forest, smoke doesn't always come from fire. Sometimes it comes from something else, something older. Something that the mountains have been producing for longer than we've been watching. And the wisest thing a lookout can do is learn to tell the difference. Learn the patterns. Follow the protocols. And accept that some mysteries in the mountains aren't meant to be solved, just observed, documented, and passed down to the next lookout who'll sit in this same tower and watch the same impossible smoke rise from valleys where nothing burns. And who'll make the same choice I made, to see without investigating, to document without understanding, to maintain the unofficial record that acknowledges what the official world refuses to recognize. That smoke in the Kootenays doesn't always come from fire, and that's not a problem to solve. It's a reality to respect, pattern to track, a mystery to accept, and a secret to keep.